First we have roll call, and trustee Robinson is not going to make it today. The other trustees are here. Our legal counsel is here. Our treasurer is not here yet. So the next item is discussion on insurance adjuster reports and pending claims status. Trustee HAYDEN.
I have prepared remarks. It helps me to think straight. Several items on today's agenda and are inquiries or task related to the library director. And there is a substantiated reason this somewhat formal method is necessary. The library director has made it abundantly clear a board majority is required for nearly any type of tasking. This board approach seems to be in line with the current director's desires. Additionally, as a trustee, I do not think it should be necessary for me to read the newspaper nor watch the TV news to learn about the unprecedented multi-million-dollar CLN library restoration plans, which seems to be the case. Regarding the first two agenda items, my goal and trustee Ploss's was to simply learn if the insurance adjuster finished his or her assessment of the damage to the Post Falls and the Athol libraries, and to find out if the claims process is completed. Additionally, we need to know how much money was approved by the insurance carrier for restoration. And for these two agenda items, it's not necessarily to challenge or find fault with the claims, but to learn what is transpiring and to formulate a restoration budget. It might be advisable for legal counsel to weigh in on these two agenda items and apply some guardrails to the discussion, or recommend that the board enter into executive session. Madam Chair and Council.
Thank you.
Need me to repeat what the issue was? I'm happy to. Basically, I want to know where are we with the insurance adjuster, and where are we with regard to what was approved? What are we working with? We need to know how much money we have to play with here.
Okay, that sounds like we need a response from Director.
I'm just going to read from the email that was sent to the board on Thursday, the 29th. My assumption about the first question was, an update was, an email was sent by Scott Oldham and forwarded to the board, and explains the pending claim decision for coverage. And the second part of that is that the email explains that the opinion of coverage is $1 million per building. The ICRIP adjuster has received a preliminary estimate from MKA, and I requested that. I have not received it. So that was received late last week. The only update, and I don't know if it falls under these specific agenda titles or topics, I did receive a first copy of a construction estimate from a contractor. It was just received.
Wait a second, I can't hear.
Sorry, that's not.
Okay, so I'll just say, I think I answered your question in the email from February 29th.
Sure.
Trustee Fox?
So I found the answer insufficient, and it's still insufficient for me. The question is, that's the limit, 1 million per building. But what if Athol expenses come in at, or what the adjuster determines the cost to be that they'll reimburse is only 750,000. Did they say you have up to $1 million damage at Athol? The 1 million, I understand, is what the policy will cover. What is the insurance saying the damage is that they're going to pay for each building?
Director? I've received no information other than a very preliminary conversation from the ICRIP adjuster, ballparking 450 to 550,000 for Post Falls, and I don't have anything in writing about Athol. But as it is understood and as it has been explained to me, that the construction or the repair cost will not exceed $1 million. It will be less.
For both? Sorry,
Trustee Blank?
for both buildings less or just less, under $1 million for each building?
So like I said, I don't have information about Athol.
Oh,
I
I'm
have
sorry.
a quote relating to removing contents, an estimate. It could go lower than the estimate, but I have an upper limit estimate and that has been approved. And we have the original work that has been done by Belfour. I have not received an invoice. And I've not received a construction quote. So essentially, the board has all the information that I have at this point.
Sure.
Trustee Claus?
So you answered 1 million, but the question is if it's 450 to 550 for Post Falls. What is that? Is that the construction? What is the 1 million cover construction plus cleanup, plus moving books, plus rental and the whole thing? So are you suggesting that we'll have, 550 to 450 left to pay for that? Out of the 1 million? I don't understand what's.
Sure. And maybe legal counsel can explain what an insurance claim is and the coverage that we have with pipes and fittings. So the 1 million, and our policy outlines all of this in detail. So if you want to review the policy, and like I said, if you have questions, maybe Mr. Boyles can answer those specifically. But everything that we have lost, everything that it costs. So everything from, the company that came out and basically shop vac and cleaned out the carpets and the water removal from the very beginning of the incident, to the content removal, to the lease space, to any lost books or personal or business property, like shelves or our circulation desk, and then all additional repairs, so drywall, electrical, data cabling. We don't necessarily in our policy have business interruption coverage. So that's an area that will not be covered. Generally speaking, the cost to repair the plumbing is already been paid for by the library and is required that we fix the pipes. Similarly for the fire sprinkler at Post Falls, just saying. So I don't know if that answers your question. So I'm just going to use some round numbers and they're just placeholders. And maybe that's the best way to illustrate. Let's just say the initial work by Belfour was $50,000. And again, I don't have an invoice for that, so I do not know. I think it's less than 50,000, but I'll just say 50,000. Let's say content moving out is 45,000 and content moving back is 40,000. That would be 85,000. And then let's say all construction is 300,000. The personal and business property that we may have lost, maybe 50,000. It's under $1 million. So all of those items can be submitted for either reimbursement or direct payment by ICRIP. So I do not anticipate significant costs being incurred by the district for the restoration and the repair and bringing it back. We had to pay for plumbing. We're going to have some miscellaneous expenses that won't be covered, but it's not significant. So that's Athol. Post Falls, if you want me to
That
go
was
through Post
Athol.
Falls.
Okay, that's kind of the next agenda, isn't it?
Yeah, please, Post Falls.
Okay, so then are we ready to move on?
No.
Trustee Fox?
I thought I was following this, you said, I thought for Post Falls was 450 to 550, and I don't understand what that is for, and then you just gave me these numbers, and then you tell me it's Athol. What is the 450 to 550 for Post Falls?
Sure, let me go through. So I just said, so there's the initial cost. So I don't have an invoice, but I'm going to say just in ballpark for figures or so that you can see where we're at. It's probably $90,000 to $100,000 for the initial work, removing water at Post Falls. The content removal is going to be between $50,000 estimated. The repair work is going to be 500,000. Again, there's the estimate right now, which I'm gonna say is probably about 500,000. There is some unknown factors. So whenever they're doing construction and demo, they open up the walls, they don't necessarily know what they're gonna have. So there's perhaps some remediation or some other steps that may be taken that might increase the repairs. The amount of water at Post Falls was greater. And so there's perhaps more risk at Post Falls for finding something than there would be for the Athol location. And then we lost significant collection at Post Falls and personal and business property. And so that portion has not been discussed with the adjuster at this point. The step is to get the repair cost estimates before we can review the total claim. So there were books that were lost, there was a story time carpet that was lost. All of those things would be in the remainder of the claim amount.
So we're the overtime. We should move on to the next item, discussion on current insurance coverage for pending claims, which we're kind of already at anyway. Trustee Hammond?
I have some more prepared remarks. Via email, the library director provided some ballpark, and I know that's what they were, rough estimates to the board regarding the two library sites. For Athol, at the time, we were informed that until the 29th of February, that's long ago, basically in direct defiance of the board decision on February 15th, that she proceeded to go ahead and sign a lease with CDA Tech Center for storage of Athol's collection and furnishings. ICRIP agreed to pay for 2 months, and that cost is $4,380 a month. ICRIP will also pay for the content moving quote provided by Compass Construction. And I'm taking these emails and trying to put it together and assemble some kind of a way of me understanding this thing. So what's not clear to me is, are these costs part of and being subtracted from the agreed to approved claim amount? Or are these approvals being provided in addition process? We've already heard, we've spent, I think what I heard just now, $90,000 to $100,000 in initial restoration just to get the place dried out. Then we have some restoration costs that were provided to us, which again, I know they were preliminary and they probably still are, but we were told in writing contents $475,300. This is for Athol. Mitigation $220,000. Repairs $705,620. And according to my calculations, this comes out to over $1.4 million for Athol. Again, not counting any initial cleanup or plumbers or whatever else was done already. Do any of the new quotes in hand have any better figures? I'm not sure what I'm hearing. I don't know if anything seems to be solidified. And is the director, this is a big question for me, is the director identifying and recommending the contractors, or is ICRIP handling this exclusively? And I would like to know what contractors were contacted. And the reason I say that is I have a great concern about using
1 second. For the audience, please, not have any behaviors that are interrupting, our business up here.
Thank you. I am very much interested in Idaho contractors if possible, if there are qualified ones and if they're available, and even more so ones in Kootenai County. So I would like to know who was contacted, and if it's all being done by ICRIM, that's different. If it's being done directly and we're not influencing who we're using out there. I'll move on now to Post Falls Library. We learned that we are getting, let me see, Lake Coeur d'Alene movers are giving us an in-kind gift that's valued at about $75,000 to $100,000. I'm assuming that's to move books from the newly leased CDA, moving books over to the new CDA Tech Center. It didn't say that in the email. I'm making that assumption. And while this might be a very generous offer, what is the estimated total cost for the planned move? We don't have that. So it's very nice we're getting, and again, I'm putting it back here, that's a very generous offer, possibly somebody offers that kind of in-kind freebie. And then it says that additionally, ICRIM has agreed to pay for 6,000 boxes at a cost estimate of $25,000. Again, I'll go back to what's not clear to me. Is this cost being subtracted from our agreed to amount with the insurance company, with ICRIM? And is ICRIM handling this one exclusively? And I'd like to know what contractors were contacted. So I'll go back now, summarize them. Besides these costs I just mentioned there for Post Falls, we were told in writing that, again, these were preliminary numbers, contents maybe $985,000, mitigation $405,000, and repairs $1,365,000. And according to my calculator, that was $2,755,000. Again, it doesn't count whatever was done up front already. It doesn't count the rental. It doesn't count other costs that are already written up there, already covered. So, my last sentence. These figures naturally raise the obvious question. Where are these additional funds beyond the insurance company coming from?
Staff like to answer that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, I think there was 26 questions in there. So I'm gonna just step back and, yeah, I'll just speak more broadly if that's okay. I think point one is that the board obviously cares about the libraries and their restoration. And so the library staff, ICRIM, everybody is working hard on this. So the community is working hard and is interested as well. So I think that part, we're all on the same page. I've said a couple of times now, and I don't necessarily feel like the board is hearing what I'm saying, that the board is premature. I don't necessarily want to confuse, but like I just threw out numbers today and there was an email and I let you know that it far exceeds and it's not realistic. You're going to get outlier quotes. That doesn't mean that that's what you should assume is going to be what we're paying. And so I kind of feel like, you know, we're working on getting all of the information. And once we have the information, then it can be very clearly articulated. And so because there's such a rush to get pieces, it isn't being understood and it isn't clear. So let me step back and kind of explain what I'm doing, where we're at, and maybe that's enough, if that's helpful. So I kind of mentioned we are still in what I would consider emergency mode. We don't have our libraries open. There is unknown factors that could be affecting the facility, causing further damage to the facility. So we are trying to move this forward with all expediency that we can, if that makes sense. We open up the walls, there's mold, we have to replace 2x4s. We don't know what's behind the walls. We don't know if we open them up and then they're gonna have to call a hygiene and do air scrubbers again and do all of that. We do not know that. But we understand that moving the project forward as quickly as we can is in the best interest of preserving our asset, our very valuable asset in both facilities. That said, the first step is immediately removing the water, immediately getting in the air scrubbers, getting in, drying things out. That part has been done. That part was done by Belfour. We got a quote for Belfour for the entire project, beginning to end. That's the numbers that I sent you. I'm just gonna be blunt. Sometimes contractors identify what your total claim limit is and then make a quote that is in line with what you may have as coverage. And I can remember Trustee Henley on a tour saying, well, it seems high, but if someone else is gonna pay for it, then why not? Right? So I think that is part of why that sometimes happens. I think they submitted that quote before ICRIMP notified us of our claim limit. So I'm gonna say that I think that is an unrealistic and undocumented and with no specificity, a marginal or not to be seriously considered quote. So I fully believe now, at the information that I have, that we will be able to conduct the repair construction costs at both Post Falls and Athol fully within our claim limits with ICRIMP. That is outstanding news. And I did not know that until 11 o'clock today. I finally got a quote from what I consider a reputable construction firm that has told me that Post Falls is going to fall within that limit. Now, the impact that it could have with the total loss and our total claim amount. I don't have all of the items that we lost and all of their replacement costs put into a spreadsheet. I cannot tell you, we lost 7,100 items. I cannot tell you what the replacement cost is on each one of those in an Excel sheet and what the total claim for replacement of those will be. I expect it to be around $400,000. So if we have $100,000 for Belfour for the initial work, and we have $100,000 for the content removal and moving back for Post Falls, and we have 500,000 or 600,000, somewhere in that range, for the construction. So if I do my math, we should maybe have $300,000 to fund replacement books, replacement furniture, replacement story time rugs. So I do believe at Post Falls that $1 million will not totally make us 100% back to where we were before. But I think we can open. I think we can ask the community for continued donations. You just received an email today about a book sale. We have our foundation activated. We have the Post Fall Friends doing a book sale. We have asked for volunteers. I will say that the initial estimates for moving the contents for Post Fall were very scary. And I was myself very nervous at that point. The best quote that I had actually came from a moving company, but it would still be several $100,000s. And so by the library coming in and library staff coming in with volunteers in the community to purchase the books, to get the donated movers, we have now reduced that expense from several $100,000 to under $100,000. And that cost savings will now allow the library to purchase books, to purchase story time rugs, to have the construction fully fall under ICRIMP. So I don't know if that helps, but I mean, that's how I'm seeing the project today.
Okay, so time is up for this. Do you have something short?
All of this is overlapping, but the leasing of the building in Coeur d'Alene is it being leased for 6 months and ICRM's paying 2 months? Is it, is the moving from Coeur d'Alene movers additional cost besides what they're donating, or are they donating all of their work and moving it? That you said that the content removal is like 50K and then return is 50K. Is that additional besides what's being donated? Or does that even include the lease of the building?
Sure.
Yeah, can we brief?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So the way that the lease is written is, I think, for 2 months, and then they'll give us notice, and then we can have the space for up to 6 months. That is fully, at least 2 months is being paid for out of the Athol project. Part of the determination on why the length of time should not be too seriously read into. So it's possible for Athol that this company, who's already been hired and is starting next week to remove the contents, removes the contents in 2 or 3 weeks, construction begins, the, drywall repairs, carpeting is all very quickly done. The materials can come back at some point. So at this point, 2 months is just a ballpark estimate on how long the Athol books will need to be out of the building. I did request that the storage space be pulled out of the Athol claim because we know we have more of a cushion between the estimates and the total claim amount. So there will be no CLN costs for the lease at this point. I don't anticipate any. It's uncertain about how long Post Falls construction will take place. So it may be longer for Post Falls. I don't have some of that information, but the long and short is that we should not anticipate anything for costs for lease for a good while. The cost of 50,000 in, 50,000 out, that was kind of for Athol, for content removal.
You listed Post Falls.
Post Falls is probably because it's going to be staff. So like I said, we're looking at $25,000 to $30,000 for books. And we'll have some miscellaneous costs like U-Haul boxes, tape, removing things, storing things, things like that. So there'll be a little bit. At maximum, what I presented to ICRIMP was $108,000 was my estimate for staff for hard costs that we would incur to move contents back and forth. And so that was by far the cheapest option. Like I said, at that point, we reviewed a moving company and then 2 contractors. And then I put together my own quote estimating. And so it was the least expensive option.
Okay, so the next item is an executive session, and I propose that we table or postpone to the end of the agenda. All those in favor? Fine, yeah. Okay, so,
Yeah, I was just going to state for the record that I don't believe that we meet the criteria for going into executive session.
okay. All right, next item is discussion on restoration cost estimates and contractors consulted. Okay, Trustee Hanley?
I'll return to this one. It sounded like I threw too many questions out. I'd like to make it clear that the board, at least speaking for myself, is not interested in managing the project or taking over operations. I'm not at all. What I'm concerned about is there are a lot of unknown numbers out here, in particular for Post Falls, but both sites. My concern is money is being spent, has been spent already, is being committed now, and there's money to be spent in the future to restore and replace things at both sites. I don't want to see us burn up, let us say, for Post Falls. When I say burn up, I don't mean waste, but we use up $1 million and then a hand goes out saying, well, we still need another $500,000 to complete the project we can't open. And so I don't have confidence and the director and the staff or anything else. I don't have confidence that we know enough about these numbers before we continue to spend the $1 million that we are awarded, we'll call it, from the insurance company. So I want to make it clear why I'm concerned about the cost. That's why. If we keep it under, within the confines of what insurance this company is paying, and that's all, that's fine. I'm happy with that. And I'll be much less likely to be asking a lot of detailed questions on it as things progress. I'm going back to my question, who's recommending the contractors? That's a question. So if you need it, since I'll keep the floor right now, but you want to know what the questions were. Who is identifying what contractors are being used for this project? And I want to know as well, I want to know which contractors, especially when it comes to restoration, we'll call it the repairs of the building. I want to know what contractors were actually contacted. And I'd like to know if they were Idaho contractors. If we didn't have any options there, that's fine. That's where my money is spent. That's where my taxes go. And that's who I'm interested in employing out there. Another one I was told just now, I think if I heard correctly, we lost about 7,100 items. We're valued around $400,000. I'm not sure how we arrived at the dollars. I want to know this too, is there a list that we know exactly which pieces of material were lost in the flood at both libraries, or mostly I'll say focused on Post Falls. I think we didn't lose a lot of materials at Athol. It was mostly Post Falls. I would like to, do we have an inventory of what was lost to make up the 7,100 line items? And I'm assuming that has to be sent into the insurance company. I don't know that for a fact. So those are some of my initial questions here, whenever the chair finds it appropriate for the director to respond. Thank you.
So before the director responds, I would like to ask the audience to, if they want to have conversations, to please take them out into the hallway. Right, Director?
Sure. I think I'll start by just kind of explaining the steps and the rationale, and then how you move forward with more information. And then when you have those concrete sort of budgets, I think is kind of the best way to sort of describe it. So when you get water in the building, the first thing you do is you call anyone, and you're really at the mercy of whoever's available quickest. So again, I don't have that receipt. I've repeatedly asked for it. Our adjuster has repeatedly asked for it. They've been finishing up. They had air scrubbers in as soon as 2 weeks ago. So I anticipate we'll get that. But let me just say the sense of urgency. You pick up the phone, you call anyone who's willing to come, and you pay what they ask you to pay. So we did that. And that was, I'm going to, again, consult counsel, but that's the expectation from our insurance company, that we mitigate the risk and the damage, if you want to speak to that. But so I just want to say that's very much an appropriate staff response to an incident. The next step is essentially calling in the construction estimators. Sometimes the adjuster does it directly. In this case, because of the scale and scope of the project, ICRIMP allowed a third-party construction cost estimator to come in. That expense is not in our claim amount. So they essentially play on behalf of ICRIMP to make sure that whoever is coming in as a contractor, kind of like what we saw, well, we'll do it for $2 million. Well, it should be done for $500,000. So they essentially vet the cost estimate for any construction. And so that is part of what we've been in. There were a lot of floods and a lot of building incidents. And so at that point, they estimated 4 weeks. It's taken them 5.5 weeks to get us that information. I can't control, they can't control. There's a lot of work, there's some complexity. And so we've just gotten that. And that, again, it's hired by ICRIMP. And so that information is currently only with ICRIMP, and I don't have it. We are receiving quotes from contractors. The initial contractor, Compass Construction, initially quoted the content removal. And so we got quotes for both Post Falls and Athol for content removal. I also followed up and got a quote from DeVries, which is a moving company. So the next step is, again, while they're working on getting your construction costs, we're working on a library part about how do we get the materials safeguarded, preserved, and out of the facility. And so that's the part that we've been working on. And it's as efficient as possible to have multiple things going on at one time. So the initial work and the content moving, again, at this point, is less than $200,000 for both Post Falls and Athol. So there's still $800,000 remaining and likely more for both claims. So that's the only money that has been spent. And I think, like I said, the first part was clearly requirement of our insurance policy that staff take that action. And so the second part, we have gone above and beyond and have identified the least expensive options. So I'm going to continue because I know there was questions about who recommended the contractor and if they're Idaho contractors. So both Belfour and Compass Construction have offices in Cody County. And I know we had talked about that before, but yes, they both have all of the necessary Idaho contractor licensings. Compass Construction has an office in Hayden. Compass Construction, some of the key personnel were involved in repairing the Post Falls Library during a damage incident about 5 years ago. So they're known to us for that purpose. They have done a lot of work with Lake City Schools, I think it is. And so at this point, both Belfour and Compass Construction have given quotes. In terms of the lost materials list, yes, it has been fully documented, but no, to the question about in an itemized list. When I initially received the Belfour estimate that was far in excess of $1 million and not knowing what our claim limit was, our adjuster did not have us move forward because it was uncertain whether any books would be covered or any personal or professional or business contents would be covered. In light of the recent estimate that came in for construction repairs, that is our next step. And so I am anticipating working with our adjuster to create out the approvals and the costs and more specific detailed information, which is, I think, what the board would feel the most confident and comfortable moving forward. However, we don't have a cost estimate for Athol, so there's still missing information. And for Post Falls, we just got it today at 11. Staff and the adjuster have not had time to review that. Mr. Boss?
I guess it'll come down to the last action item or last agenda item. I need to see this written out. I follow the numbers, I get confused. You started explaining about the initial content, or not content, but mitigation cost for, and you said 200,000 for both Post Falls and Athol, and then you said so it'll fall in within 800,000 for the $1 million for each. So is it a total of 200,000 for both, or each library, the original mitigation cost was, 100,000 each? Or so I can't follow what you're saying on that, but what's after that first cost? If there's $1 million covered, what's left for each library after that initial cost that you said was 200,000?
So again, I would be happy to put together documentation. This agenda was completely unclear to me. And again, some of the information, you're talking about round numbers that are completely, I don't feel as comfortable putting together something that is not based on anything. I don't have that initial Belfour quotes or numbers on that. What I said was, and maybe I can write it down for you, and maybe that'll explain it, if you want to take a second. So. So I'm just gonna say, so let's just say, and I don't have these numbers, so these are round numbers. The initial work to remove the water by Belfour was $100,000, let's say, for Post Falls, and was $40,000 for Athol. The content removal at Post Falls is gonna be done by the library. Again, the max of this will be $100,000, but we got the mover's donation. So $25,000 for boxes, $5,000 for U-Haul boxes. Let's say we pay gas or do something like that. Let's just, content removal is $50,000. Content removal for Athol is $75,000 because it's a contractor doing it. Construction for Post Falls is $500,000. Construction for Athol is $300,000. Again, I have something near this number. So these, well, I'll say these numbers are more under our control and known. This is, I'm gonna say, more known. I don't have this information, and I don't know what other items we may put in our claim. Let's just say these are books, $300,000 for books, because we've already gotten to our $1 million claim. So we will likely have items that are here that are not gonna be covered in this $1 million. But I can't tell you right now how much that is. Does that make sense?
What's the bottom number on
This
the
is
left?
1 million. Oh, this is 50,000. Let's say we have books or tables. Some of the furniture got killed there. So a lot of the wood there sort of broke apart, and so I assume we're gonna have some damage there.
That column doesn't add up to 1 million.
That's right, because I just told you that we are not gonna hit $1 million. No one is anticipating
Well,
us.
they're not gonna pay us $1 million then.
They're not gonna give us money, Tom. Have you not?
Now in the audience, please be quiet.
I know, it's just so frustrating. I have a question.
It's trustee Blank.
Okay, so what you are saying is we may not use the full $1 million. Is that what you're saying? And that's why it doesn't add up to it. But she's saying the bottom line is that's what our claims are, a $1 million for each building. Okay,
No,
right. That's what I'm asking her. Is that what you're saying up there, that our insurance coverage is $1 million for each building?
That is what I understand.
And then those are your estimated costs from what you have right now that it
Yes.
will cost. So,
Yes.
okay, that's very clear. Thank you very much.
Trustee Potts.
why would ICRIM pay us 1 million for Apple? She just,
This is a board meeting. not a finance meeting.
trustee
I
just said that
take
you
it
would
out.
cover, pay
No.
1 million.
that we were covered.
That adds up to 194, 485.
Okay, but then, so then they'll pay us $485, because
Yeah.
that's what it costs,
Okay, I just wonder why the 1 million was there.
because that's what we're covered for.
Well, I know that. But
So let me just say, so let's say these numbers are off and we come in at $1.5 million for total cost, because I told you there's a number here I don't know, and let's say this ends up being 600,000. So let's just say that this all adds up to 1.5 million. They're still only gonna give us $1 million. And then whatever the difference is would be what the library would have to pay out of our carry forward or fund balance. However, I think everyone can agree that construction costs, we need to repair the building so that we can get them reopened. If there is any unpaid expense, it's going to be in books and miscellaneous personal property. And this is now reasonably been guaranteed by the quote that I just got to be less than $1 million. So to answer your question, ICRIM is paying this. ICRIM is paying this. The only portion that the library might have to pay is whatever our costs are that are in excess.
where does the lease for the building in Coeur d'Alene come out?
Contents removal, is that correct? Yeah,
So the lease cost is estimated at 2 months right now. They could approve this and say, guess what? The contents took longer, the construction took longer. We're gonna add 2 more months. And guess what? We're still under $1 million. So this is fine. They may say, Athol is done, because they're estimating construction completion to be done in 4 months. And they may say, oh, okay, you still have Post Falls in storage. We're gonna pay 2 months of your lease over here. So again, all covered by ICRIM.
Trustee Claus?
Both libraries are going into that lease, the materials are going into the lease facility, and ICRIM is paying it out of the Athol bill. Is that what you're saying?
Currently.
Both libraries are going there. Okay.
And if I can, and staff are too. I do not anticipate that staff will be on site at Post Falls during the demo. So there may be a couple of weeks during demo that staff are not on site and are rehoused at the temporary storage location or at HAYDEN or in another library. So it covers the storage for both materials and furniture that needs to be removed, as well as staff as needed.
Trustee Hanley?
I'm very comfortable with the Athol, I'll call it financial plan there. I'm still a little concerned about Post Falls because it's obvious we don't know if we're gonna go over $1 million. My concern at this point would be how many, and you probably won't have an instant answer, but my concern is is there any discretionary spending gonna be made before we restore the facility? So let us say, and I'll just take a shot at you, to recarpet your office, which didn't get wet. I'm just making believe. Are we gonna do that because we have a carpet company here, or are we gonna, meaning at the site, again, I'm just making a, or we'll say the conference rooms, they didn't get wet back there. I'm concerned that the board, if we think we're gonna go over what the insurance company is going to pay, that we don't add any discretionary spending in there without the board saying yes. Because this is, I know when it comes to construction stuff, it ends up going over budget almost every time I've done a project anywhere. It's like, next thing you know, it's
Hold on a
10%.
second. Would staff make note of the 2 ladies, blonde and white hair, in the front who are being disruptive? You are warned that you may be trespassed if you interrupt again.
I have a question. They haven't disturbed me. The audience has not disturbed me at all.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I'll continue. So So I don't know how we want to do this as a board, but I would like to be involved, and I think that the board should be involved in any discretionary spending during the restoration period, because I want to make sure that we don't go over the insurance amount without being involved in some capacity. That's my primary concern. I have no concerns currently with Athol, but my concern is with Post Falls, that it looks like it's going to be dangerously close. And I want to make sure that we're involved when it comes to spending that's not critical to making a facility habitable and restoring it. I've had two, there was a mention by the director, the adjuster was vetting people. Again, is the adjuster and/or ICRIP making the decisions on who's being considered for contractors? And I say that, well, I don't really care about the short-term stuff that was already done. I'm concerned about the construction. I want to know, are we identifying those, or is ICRIP doing that, just so I know that? And then the last question I had was, if books were removed, which they were, obviously, we were told as a guess, 7,100 items, they must be known. One of the meetings we had, I think it was in Post Falls, we were shown pictures of the books before they were put into the dumpster. Just an example, we were given one or two of those, I believe. And it must be known which books got dumped out, because how do they get taken out of the CIM? They don't exist anymore, and so I doubt we're going to do an inventory of all the books that do exist to find out what we got rid of. So I would like to know, there must be a list. I want to know, is there a list, a detailed list, to some degree, of what was thrown out? I'm not only witch hunt for it, I want to know, because it would help us when it comes back around to purchasing books again, to know what went out. So those are the three things. If I had three of those there, I think the board, and I don't depend upon someone wants to make a motion, or if I did, I want to know what discretionary spending is planned, or as it comes down the way for the Post Falls site. I would like to know who is putting the contractor names out there for the construction portion. And I would like to know if there's a list of materials that were disposed of.
Okay, so would you like that, because we're over time for that section, so we could have a majority consent that we ask the director to supply that information
I should just.
when she has it? Okay, so quickly.
I'll just answer part of it if that's fair.
I would just say there's a lack of information or knowledge by the new trustees on construction administration. There's a process called change orders. So items that are outside of the scope of the project are coming to us as change orders request, and then a quote for the amount. Because it's the expenditure of capital funds, or likely the expenditure of capital funds in this case, those would come to the board for approval. And so all of those items would be known to the board. So there is already a process in place for the board to oversee that part of construction administration for fund distribution. The other questions, I'm happy to respond at a different time.
Right, so we have a majority consent that she will respond to those. Okay, and
Yes.
Plus and Hanley. Okay, so we have majority consent.
Did you want me to email the answer to that? Is that
Email? That sounds good. Yeah.
okay?
Ask the question, Director or Chair.
Yeah.
So when you say discretionary, Trustee Hanley, do you mean spending outside of what we call scope in terms of the insurance estimate? Because the adjuster will create a scope of what was damaged. So X square feet of carpet, right? And so is discretionary spending what exceeds the scope? Or is discretionary spending what type of carpet, what grade of carpet, like a different like kind and quality?
That which is outside the scope of the damaged area.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, we are going to move on. Discussion on restoration plan for Post Falls and Athol libraries. I already answered those questions. Okay, then, Mr. Boss.
I wanted to clarify the bottom line. Is there another number that wasn't put in there for returning the books? Or is that up in the 75,000? I thought the top line was to
I don't have it broken out right this minute. But it's two parts, remove the books, bring the books back, but I'm just estimating 70, I don't know. Like I said, they're just made up numbers at this point.
All right, and moving on to initiate insurance full coverage applications for 2024-25 regular term. Trustee Hanley.
Well prepared remarks. After many months, CLN eventually received a provisional full coverage insurance quote from broker Redmond Insurance. Considering the currently unresolved claims for both Athol and Post Falls, the insurance company that Redmond shopped out, Wright Specialty, declined the midterm policy offer. Redmond representative in an email suggested we submit our application for the 2024-25 policy term by March 14th for an October start date. Therefore, I move that the director submit the completed application to Redmond Insurance. I have it written down for the sheriff for full coverage by March 14th, and to take the necessary action to have quotes from no fewer than 2 other companies ready to be presented to this board by July 18th. Yes.
Thank you. So it has been moved that the director submit the completed application to Redmond Insurance for full coverage by March 14th and take the necessary action to have quotes from no fewer than 2 other companies ready to be presented to this board by July 18th. Staff discussion? Trustee Blank?
From 2 other companies, is that asking Redmond to provide 2 other companies full insurance? Is that what we do, or do we go elsewhere? What would be the steps to get that done? I'm asking the director if that.
Director? If you respond?
Do we expect an insurance company to give us 3 quotes?
So I'm confused by the motion a little bit. I'm not sure if I was specifically required to get a quote from Redmond and then 2 additional ones. So you're telling me that I have to bring Redmond Insurance quote directly back to the board. I'm also confused about why the board is discussing this agenda topic when we have not heard back from legal counsel from the February 20th request for information. So I would prefer that we get clarification on the process. My preferred process, which I will say again and again, is to make it very transparent, to publicize that we're asking for requests. I'm not certain if we are going to be offered a renewal from ICRIP. I'm not sure if that would be considered a quote or a valid quote. I will say that I have completed the required documentation and questionnaire for us to continue to get an ICRIP quote. However, I don't have any sense of what the recent claims may mean or with our recent history may mean. So I do have some lack of clarity on this. I will say that time frame requested by one insurance company seems out of what I'm used to for getting annual insurance claims. I'm not sure that July 18th is a realistic timeline. We did not receive the quote from the ICRIP. I think it was until July of last year. So I'm not sure if that would be a valid quote or if it's possible to bring that to the board. If that makes sense. The deadline is now before we received ICRIP's renewal last year. I would also just say that this timeline, again, is pretty ambitious. I know there was a date mentioned before July 18th, but the last board action to get Redmond insurance and Wright specialty cost the district 25 hours of my time, 20 hours of our facility manager's time, and additionally overtime within that mix. And so I'm not certain what further quotes would entail. Like I said, I would prefer to start afresh and put out public notice for a proposal and be very transparent. And this motion is unclear to me if I'm going to need to use Redmond insurance or whether I can move forward in the way that I feel most equitable with documented, transparent criteria.
Sure.
Trustee Foss?
So I believe the motion was clear. It's based on Redmond's response. Get us the additional missing information. I believe there was some that was never given. They want it by, for a quote this summer, they want the information by March 14th. I don't want to miss another chance to get a quote. So that is why the motion is there to have you provide the information. I believe it's just a few things that may be missing. And then whatever other timelines, it wouldn't be Redmond, it would be other brokers. I think there should be two others besides iCrimp. If iCrimp wants to join in, I'd be willing to have them do it, but they're pretty clear they're not giving us full coverage. So two other brokers, and if you can do that in July, that's fine, but Redmond wants the additional information. They aren't giving the quote in March. They want the additional missing information by March 14th. So that's the purpose of this motion, is to make sure the board has a clear direction that they need to be given that additional information, and then go get two others.
Trustee Hanley?
I heard a couple of questions come up. The one that I believe that was pending with regard to Redmond was pending with counsel. That was for, if I understood correctly, a midterm policy. We're no longer looking at a midterm policy. That was shot down. We're looking at a regular annual start date of October. And that's for an annual one. Why am I pushing Redmond? The last email we had, it did say that we were well along, or I believe that may have been the director wrote that. It was nearly completed, so it doesn't look like it should be as big of a lift. Months ago, I heard, again, I have no knowledge of Redmond personally at all. It was a good price, I heard. I think we were down in Harrison when I heard that. They offered, I understand, full coverage, where I understand that iCrimp doesn't. iCrimp cut back significantly on the coverage they were offering. And so I'm okay if the director wants to bring in 5 quotes. I'm not obsessed with any particular company, but I think we should get one from Redmond since we've been down that path for so long. And if some other company beats them out, I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to spend any more money than we have to. So I'm looking for full coverage and I'm looking for a good price. So I hope that answers the questions and makes it clear as to why I made the motion I did.
Director?
So I know there was some, I'm going to call it allegation, that not all the information was turned in. It was fully completed. Everything that was asked for by me and staff has been turned in. The quote was sent back to the board from the original email that said that applications must be filled out and submitted by Thursday, March 14th to be submitted to carriers. This step is nearly complete. I assume that was work on Mr. Winkler's part that needed to be done. I will additionally add that there was some revealing of a lack of clarity on whether the policy that was offered had cybersecurity coverage. Wright Specialty offers a municipal policy and then a separate cybersecurity policy. That was not disclosed to me. I will state that in part of my diligence, I did contact the State Board of Insurance. And when I asked them about a company that isn't providing us documents, isn't providing us specimen forms, they strongly encourage, if you're not getting, you have two options. You can move to another insurance option provider, or you can file a claim with the state board and they can retrieve that information on our behalf. And so I will say that as part of this process, I have several concerns that I don't believe the board has allowed any conversation to be addressed. And I would specifically point out to the letter with sent to Mr. Boyles about, is an agreement for insurance entered by CLN void or voidable, and the authority for hiring. It became clear to me in the proposal that there was an agency fee. Usually an agency fee implies a relationship, if you will. And so Article 4 says that the director shall have the authority to hire part-time and full-time employees for the district. And it's also in the employment contract for the director in paragraph 4, which states that the duty is hiring and overseeing all employees of the library other than the board and then the statute. And so I strongly encourage the board to stop acting recklessly and not allow the director and other board members to receive legal advice.
Stanley?
I've heard criticism of the board that we act recklessly too many times from someone who apparently seems to forget she works for us.
Oh, no.
The contractor that's being discussed here, we'll call the insurance company.
Hold on
Is not-
a second.
Sorry.
The two ladies in the front that keep disrupting, can they be trespassed? Does that require board action or?
I think it requires we take a recess. If they don't leave on their own, we can call law enforcement.
Call recess for 5 minutes.
I would like to know why
Yeah.
during this recess, I would like to say, you guys are so shameful. You are wasting our tax.
Well, I want you to call the police.
You are wasting
Call the
our
sheriff's
tax
department.
dollars.
Is asking them to leave just the room. You can go out and wander in the library until the end of the meeting, and you're welcome to come back to your board meeting. Anyway, we would rather not have to call the police and have you removed or trespassed. So
I'm not leaving. This is the board.
I'm not in favor of this. I think this is a violation of First Amendment rights I was not disrupted at all, and I didn't hear anybody else making any complaints. I think asking again is one thing, but I think that you're stepping into a very troublesome situation for this board, and I would request that we just ask once again and move forward.
well, it has been asked and it's been mentioned.
It has not been asked by the full
Okay,
board.
I have the floor at this point, and there have been multiple interruptions, and our public comment policy says that the audience is not to interrupt the board. That's probably not the exact wording. Anyway, all right, you were out of the room, and now that you're back in, you've been asked to leave just this room. You can go out and wander the library, and you can come back to other board meetings. But for today, there's been too many interruptions, and you are asked to leave.
I'm not leaving.
Okay, so then we ask the staff to trespass them.
I don't do it on this.
Oh, I mentioned to her, but that we do not want to call the cops. We do not want to have to trespass you. But if you refuse to leave, then that's our next option, because we can't conduct business here. And that's kind of the point of why we're here. Okay. Sorry, this is not the way I wanted it to be, and I want the board to be able to conduct.
Do that way.
Well, you have questioned. You've been warned, you've been asked, and you have ignored that.
No other board member has complained. Not one. And so I'm quite concerned about this. I haven't seen behavior that has disrupted this board meeting. I just want to say it again and again and again.
Okay, we heard you, thank you. And so our time is up for that section, so I call the question, which means that we stop debate and we vote on the question. All those in favor? Yeah,
No, we call the
Well,
question.
Okay.
right now, we're just voting on calling the question, which means we stop debate. So all those in favor of stopping debate?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. Okay, so the ayes have it and the question is called. The previous motion was that the director submit the completed application to Redmond Insurance for full coverage by March 14th and take the necessary action to have quotes from no fewer than 2 other companies ready to be presented to this board by July 18th.
Like a roll call vote, please?
Roll call vote, Floss,
Aye.
Aye.
Blake.
Nay.
I am an aye, so the ayes have it and the motion is carried. The director has been moved, or the director will submit the completed application to Redmond Insurance for full coverage by March 14th and take the necessary action to have quotes from no fewer than 2 other companies ready to be presented to this board by July 18th. And we will then move on. Did you get all that? Do you want me to?
Yeah, that'd be helpful. If I could just state for the record that I feel like I'm being denied access to legal service.
Okay, sorry to hear that. Our next item is library director tasking to provide paper copy position descriptions for all CLN staff positions deliverable at the next regular BOT meeting. Trustee Hannan?
For Idaho statute 33-2720, which is the powers and duties of the Board of Trustees, if you get down to small letter D, in that statute, the board is responsible for creating job descriptions. Therefore, I move that the library director provide interested board members with paper copies of all CLN staff position descriptions at the March 22nd regular board meeting.
Can I legal counsel quote that specifically? Because my understanding is the board's responsibility is to approve job descriptions, not to create job descriptions.
What does it say?
Okay, so actually, so it has been moved, excuse me, that the library director provide interested board members with paper copies of all CLN staff position descriptions at the March 22nd regular board meeting. Yeah, I've not seen that it says that we wanted to create anything. We just want a copy of what's.
I just like the full citation read by legal counsel into the record.
I think that one right there. I can read this, sorry.
Oh, yeah, discussion. Go ahead, trustee Hanley.
I can read the exact statute, the line in there, 33-2720, letter D, to create job descriptions, personnel policies, and compensation packages for library personnel. That's all is on letter D. And so I can't create job descriptions if I don't know what we have.
Trustee Blank?
What is the purpose of this? I am not understanding. I'm not saying yay or nay. I would really like to understand the full purpose of it. Obviously, 2 trustees have been talking together, or maybe 3 have, and it's been patently obvious from the beginning of this meeting. But for this one, I would really like to understand what is moving this request. Help me understand that, please.
Sure.
Trustee Foss?
So my understanding, we were given all of the policies that the library has, ones that were online that I got, plus others that weren't available to us. This is in our wheelhouse to have approved them. And I, as a new trustee, or new this last year, was never given a copy of all of the job descriptions. And I think we should have it. I'd like to have an understanding of what all the different positions are, and I'd like to have it in my file. So that's all there is to it. Please give us a copy of it. We're entitled to have it.
Okay, and actually, isn't our next board meeting March 21st? I guess is it 22nd?
I think it's 22nd.
I have another question.
Trustee Blank?
I would like to ask staff if, it's true. I mean, job descriptions are public information. And so that is, I'm not contesting that or anything. I'm wondering, given everything that is going on right now, I'm just curious as to if this is going to take a lot of time.
Okay,
I'm asking the director.
okay, well, her hand's not up, so I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, yes, okay.
So I guess that was one of my questions too, and a question about how this fits in the calendar of projects that the board is going to be doing for this year. We do have, again, new trustees, and so the whole calendar and how that works, we will rapidly be moving into what I call budget season. We will be moving other things along, and it's unclear to me how this is prioritized with all of the other topics that the board has already outlined for us. So we still have the collection, selection, withdrawal policy. We still have the director evaluation policy. Last meeting, we were talking about the emergency procedures policy. I've already mentioned how many hours of time it has taken to complete insurance paperwork. Whatever is needed to be done by, I think it was March 13th, it has not been presented to me, so I cannot give any estimate on how much time that will take. I will say that I have one day next week and then I'm out of town. And so I think the sum total of days that I have at work available is 3 between now and the next Board of Trustee meeting. I don't understand why the board isn't listening to the comment that the business manager is currently on leave. I don't know why the board isn't listening to the fact that we have a vacancy in our communications personnel. I don't understand why the board isn't prioritizing all of this construction work and project management that's currently going on. Removing 63,000 items from a library is a huge undertaking. Coordinating, and just so you know, we've received requests from over 100 volunteers, is a huge undertaking. And so from my perspective, I really don't understand how this is a priority in, I think it's 10 days. So it will take time to compile them. I will say that I know it's later on the agenda, but I have prepared the board's request for new materials added to the library. That is probably 300 pages long. So between all the job descriptions and all of the reports for new information, the board just keeps piling more and more information without any prioritization. And again, if the board wants to clearly articulate, but I would just like to remind the board that this feels like 2 trustees are determining the priorities and the goals of the board. And I would much prefer that all 5 of the trustees create that in a public meeting. We don't even have a trustee here today. So again, this is not a reflection of what the goals to achieve in the next 6 months or the next year of the entire board.
Trustee Hanley?
I'm not asking for position descriptions to be written. I'm asking for the existing position descriptions. I would expect they're either in a physical file or electronic file. They need to be printed out and handed out. There shouldn't be, I don't think there are hundreds of these things. There are only about 100 employees. And I'm sure many of the job descriptions are the same because we have, let's just say 2 or 3 people in each library doing the same thing with the same position descriptions. I would be amenable, given the incredible workload for the library director, to pushing the date back to April 18th, 1 extra month, if that would be helpful and good consideration. And if it's agreeable, I can amend the motion.
Yeah, we could just say the April regular board meeting.
April 18th.
Trustee Claus?
Are these available online? You've got the policies, some, not all of them, but a lot of them online, but this is something that's available to us. I go get them myself, but it's not available, but as far as I know.
I don't think they're that.
So the library staff have access to what we call like a staff web and most of our job descriptions are available to all staff and are digitized. My concern in this request is that there may be job descriptions that are not currently in use, or job descriptions that are historic, and I would have no way to access those. And again, the authority for those records is on leave. I think this request would likely result in staff having to work, and it would charge the district overtime. Again, the timeline for the employee to return is 3 to 4 weeks. And so I really haven't heard anything that tells me why this is the priority in the middle of everything else. I mean, I would have preferred the board's priority be the classification and comp study, which also addresses some of the items and will also be extremely important for the budget. So if the trustees would like me to create a calendar for them and to articulate the pieces of information that I think they're going to need for budget decisions, I'm happy to do that. But again, there's going to be a lot of other work that's necessary for staff. We do not have a full staff, and we now have an incredibly large project or multiple projects to manage.
All right, so do we have majority consent to change that to the April regular board meeting? Or?
Yes,
And
I'm not in agreement with this, though it will very likely pass. So based on that, yes, for changing this, I don't plan on voting yes.
Okay, and Henry, yes, no?
Has the library director made a proposed delivery date when she would like to make this available? Because it also, I heard the word compensation studies. Well, it's difficult to figure out how much we should compensate someone when I don't even know what they do.
Well, and I think this plays a bigger role, and I've actually had a conversation with legal counsel about the hiring of a third-party consultant to assist the library, and typically that is what a board would do. So the board members don't have the experience or the credentials, and so typically what happens is they will allow the library to move forward with a consultant that can assist us in updating all of our job descriptions. And so that would be my preferred method of moving forward rather than spending time and having untrained professionals in this industry working at things that they're not familiar with. So if the board was interested, my proposal would be that I get a couple of quotes from these third-party HR type individuals, and that we get some idea about the cost, and that we move this forward as part of prior to the budget season, so that we can again ask our consultants that did that work for us before how these new job descriptions might fit with that class and comp study, so then we could implement further step increases or changes in pay scales for staff.
sure.
Okay, so we're still on the majority consent thing. Henry, did you?
I just want to amend the motion for this.
Okay, so-
Date.
Yeah, we're,
Is there anything?
so yes to April. I'm in favor.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have majority consent to change that to the April regular board meeting. So our time is way up. I call the question, which means that we end debate and vote on moving that the library director provide interested board members with paper copies of all CLN staff position descriptions at the April regular board meeting. So now we
Roll
are,
call vote, please.
okay, so just calling the question.
The question.
Yeah,
Voted first on calling the question. So trustee.
Yes.
nay, I have something else I would like to say.
Okay, well, when the question is called, there's no more debate. We just vote.
I understand that. I think it was prematurely called.
Our time is up for this. So trustee Blas, verbally, yes or no?
For which,
For calling the question?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Trustee Blank? you
Nay.
say No?
Motion.
Okay, and I am a yes, so majority has it, and the question is called. So we will now vote on that the motion for the library director to provide interested board members with paper copies of all CLN staff position descriptions
Roll call
at
vote,
the
please.
April regular board meeting. Would you please wait?
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I really did.
Oh, okay. Okay, so roll call vote.
Aye.
Okay. Blank?
Nay.
Hanley?
Aye.
And the Addison is aye, so the ayes have it, and the motion is carried that the library director provide interested board members with paper copies of all CLN staff position descriptions at the April regular board meeting. Director, did you need a copy of that?
Sure.
Trustee Fox?
How do we notify that we're an interested party, the ones that voted aye?
Right,
or-
I'm an interested party.
Yeah, it'll be at this board meeting, so I would imagine that's all of this. All right, so the next,
Law enforcement.
oh, okay, we will recess. It is library director tasked to provide short and long-term staff employment report for closed water damaged libraries, deliverable at the next regular board meeting, which means Board of Trustees. Trustee Henley?
I will assume all available staff will be busy moving books from the affected libraries in the month of March and likely into the month of April. Well, when this is completed, or once it is, how will the Athol and post-fall staff be employed? Now, I'm very sensitive, and I am, to the staff's ability to earn a steady living. But we as trustees also need to ensure the taxpayers are receiving a value while the two libraries remain closed for many months. Therefore, I move that the library director provide the board with a reasonably detailed staff utilization plan for staff normally assigned to the Athol and post-fall libraries at the next regular board meeting, which is March 21st.
All right, has been moved that the library director provide the board with a reasonably detailed staff utilization plan for staff normally assigned to the Athol and Post Falls libraries at the next regular board meeting, March 21st. Trustee Blank?
Is that verbal? I mean, because that would be certainly considerably easier for a very overloaded director to do than to have to provide something in writing, which may be difficult at this point.
Sure. I absolutely would want it in writing. I am totally confused listening to verbal reports, and today was an example of that. I want to know myself, if we're not going to open the Post Falls and Athol libraries on some interim basis for pickup or small sections of children and small section of adult or something, and we're not even going to use the facility, we're still having our taxpayers, library clients have to go to Liberty Lake, up to Hayden or Rathdrum, or over to Coeur d'Alene. And I have talked to a number of them, and that it is taking a toll on them. I think we should open up a small facility. I've asked for it numerous times here in the last month, but I'd like to know what the employees at those two libraries are going to do after we finish moving the books. And I would like it to be opening a small section of the library.
Trustee Henley?
I didn't have a plan, whether it's in writing or verbal. That was not part of my thinking here, but I am concerned, and I mean this sincerely. I do care about people's ability to earn a living, but I have a fiduciary duty and answering to the taxpayers to make sure I have some idea that staff are going to be either gainfully employed, and I'm aware of that, or they're not, and they're going to be furloughed or temporary reduction in force. So whatever there were three terms thrown out there, but I kind of need to know that. And I'm hoping at the next regular meeting, we would have a pretty good idea what that plan might be. And I am potentially open to the idea of pushing it back 1 month if that's too aggressive a timeline. I'm trying to be reasonable, but we need to have a fairly good feel for what's going on with the staff, tasking. I don't know each job, but where are they? What are they doing? Because, I'll pick one. I don't even know the woman's name. I'll apologize, but we have a manager of a library. The manager doesn't have a library. I'm sure they're not going to sit on a stool and watch the contractors work. So unless there's a manager job out there or some managerial level job to be taken care of, then I don't understand why we're a manager for that. I'm just picking on one position because I don't have the position descriptions, but, that's all. I want to know, I want to get a decent understanding. I think the board should have that of what's going to be keeping, how they're going to be deployed and used to eliminate outage, because it's anticipated it's quite a few more months.
Director?
Sure. I'm happy to give a general report on the status of staff and where we are. I think because there's been so many accusations of micromanagement and the division between the role of the board and the role of staff, it might behoove us to just take a second and talk about that. Again, this is not in the same vein of what you're saying, any criticism or any sort of reference. I just want to avoid further perhaps miscommunications. Essentially, the board, when they set the budget for the year, expenditures within that budget fall within the director's purview. And so there is a balance, and it is identified in Idaho statute as well. And we kind of talked about this, like sometimes I can't necessarily reveal everything to the board relating to personnel issues and things like that. And so I just want to, I guess, assist in managing expectations. And I guess I had a little bit of a reaction to reasonably detailed. So I will provide information that I think is appropriate for the level of the board. You may have questions, and I may say at this point, I don't feel comfortable answering those questions. I will say, because there's a potential of personnel action, it would be reckless of me to be revealing that in an open meeting, and it would be reckless of me to be revealing that to the board before speaking with staff and having all of those procedures in place. So I'm happy to type something up, or I'm even happy to send an email. But I will say, in the next 10 days, I expect the email to be along the lines of what you've already received in the email. There's not much information for me to reveal at this time. So I would recommend a more meaningful conversation for the board or report in April.
Christina?
It is somewhat within our wheelhouse as trustees, because if I recall correctly, the personnel manual gives the trustees the ability to enact reductions in force. And I'm not pushing for reduction in force, but I don't see how reduction in force could happen if I don't have information. And if the information or things that are being discussed regarding personnel are in fact confidential, the board can be given information during an executive session, so it doesn't have to be done publicly. But again, I'm not on some witch hunt or some push to get rid of people or reductions in force or furloughs, but I do need to get, I'm asking for a reasonable idea of what's going on with the staff that's managing libraries that are closed.
Trustee Blank, you were next. Do you want to defer to the director, or do you want to?
I'm gonna say something, and then, the, Idaho statute, I think the concern here is that, we are only in charge of the director, period, that's it. Anything, every other employee is under the director's jurisdiction. That's Idaho code. If she talks about that in any way, and it seems as if this motion is heading that way, if she talks about that in any way, she will be violating confidentiality that is the law. And so what we're more asking for, what are the plans for serving the public? not what are employees doing? What are our plans for serving the public is what I would be looking for here.
Director?
I think that's a good sort of capsule too. And I will say that I am looking at some options that may exceed the board's expectations. But I'm not able to reveal those. And again, there's so much going on, and a lot of pieces in play. And again, I know the board wants to know details, but again, sometimes there's a timeline and it may not align with the board's meetings. So transparency, I've sent emails, I'm happy to send emails, and then the board can decide whether or not they want to. Just a little bit of clarification. The personnel policy reduction in force, and I don't know if legal wants to respond to this, but reduction in force has to be driven by a budget decision. So this year's budget has been determined. And so again, it's not a reduction in force and a budget decision. And so I think that would need to go to legal about if the board did decide they wanted to lay off staff. I don't think you have that authority. And even a reduction in force, I'm not sure that it would meet that standard as well. And so if the board is at all thinking that, I would consult with legal before pursuing that or before asking something in a public meeting. But like I said, I'm happy to talk about our service and what the next steps are. I think, again, every month, I mean, look what happened in January. We knew nothing. We had February. We didn't know very much. Now we know more. And as we move forward, once this project gets on the rails, it's going to be a lot better. That's the truth. And I would say, like right now, what I want to tell the board is about our fundraising efforts and our book sale and our request for trustees to volunteer. So all of that stuff I can do in an email, and it doesn't require a special meeting.
Sure.
Trustee Plus?
So it's that $500,000 up there that's gonna come out of our budget. Now, if you've got a way to handle it, that's okay, with donations. But we have the authority, it's the budget, and we might have to have a updated budget meeting or something, but we have to handle that. We can't just take $500,000 out of our budget.
There's no $500,000 in our budget. This is
Right there.
100% ICRAM. Right now,
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
You've got 1.5 million and 1 million's gonna come out.
this is not a real number. This is not a real number.
If it becomes, which is what you're hinting at, if it becomes $500,000 that CLN has to take out of our existing budget, we have to deal with that, and we have the right to deal with it, whether we have another updated budget meeting and modify things. But if the taxpayers are not getting service, and we're gonna have to raise property taxes next year to cover that, that's not gonna go over well. So we need to do some preventive austerity measurements or something, not measurements, but actions to deal with that. So that's why the last agenda item is my highest concern, is a budget, and seeing how all this is gonna go. And maybe you don't have it yet, but I wanna know if they're not being employed by serving the public, and we're going in the hole and digging into our budget, the board has the right to deal with this, and that's why we want to know this.
All right, so our time is up for this section. Just like to do something really fast.
What I hear is a lot of catastrophizing. What if? I would like us to wait for the realities. And before we start looking at budget, what do we actually need? Let's let the director gather more information. I'm pleased with the information that's already been gathered. This kind of stuff takes a while. So could we not please find out, we can ask, when would be the best time for us to have, what are the plans for serving the public?
Okay, so do we want to Trustee Hanley?
I'd like to call the question.
Okay, the question has been called, has been moved that the library director provide the board with a reasonably detailed staff utilization plan for staff normally assigned to the Athol and Post Falls libraries at the next regular board meeting, March 21st. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this is just for calling the question.
Aye.
Okay,
I think there's more discussion to be had here, but I obviously will not prevail.
Okay, so the motion is carried, the ayes have it, the motion is carried, and so now we will vote on the motion that the library director provide the board with a reasonably detailed staff utilization plan for staff normally assigned to the Athol and Post Falls libraries at the next regular board meeting, March 21st, and you want this to be roll call?
Yes,
Okay. Foss,
Aye.
Mike,
nay.
Hanley?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The motion is carried. And so now the library director provides the board with a reasonably detailed staff utilization plan for staff normally assigned to the Athol and Post Falls libraries at the next regular board meeting, March 21st. Okay, and our next section is a library director to provide rationale for periodic overdrive reports denial, explain library director's abstention vote, and provide required report at next regular board meeting. Trustee Hanley?
On January 18th, the library director was instructed by this board to provide a periodic report of all overdrive digital ebooks, audio, and physical books purchased. The first such report is due March 21st at the regular monthly CLN meeting. The director's email to the board on February 22nd informed the board that the overdrive report was denied by the CIN board. And I find it highly disturbing that this board tasked the library director with this report, and instead of supporting the board while participating at the CIN board meeting, she chose to abstain at voting time. In a supplemental email from the director, it was included in the minutes from the CIN meeting on this subject, when we got the detailed CIN meetings, their minutes. And we were informed, and I'll quote from this CIN meeting, "No such records exist," end quote. Well, no kidding. That's why we're requesting it. Further, this was not a public records request. This is a board-initiated tasking to the director. This supplemental email also included instructions on how to produce the report. And I will quote, "Overdrive purchases can be sorted by date added and intended audience using search filters on the website and Libby app," end quote. Well, it's interesting we were informed how to produce the report, and it should be noted that the CLN board did not request instructions. No, it directed that the report be produced and provided. Unless this board modifies this request, and I'm not asking for that, the next meeting, the report is due. All books, I'll go back, whatever it was called, the whole thing, audio books, regular books, are all due at the March 22nd meeting. So I just want to clarify that. Is that clear for the chair? No, I'm sorry. Is that clear to the director? I'll ask the chair of that. But I hope the director is clear on that.
Yeah, March 21st, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I got the wrong date on me. That's good.
Okay.
What's my concern here? I mean, I hear all sorts of concerns. We asked CIN for an overdrive report, they denied it, and you're expecting the director to give you one anyway?
Trustee Hanley?
I didn't ask the CIN for anything. I asked the library director to produce a report. We were informed multiple times, "Oh, these reports are readily available. You can do it yourself." Well, there was a motion made and it was passed publicly here or at one of the past meetings, saying we want these reports on purchases that were made. And it was agreed they would be provided every 2 months. The first such report is due at the next regular meeting in March. I won't get the date, I keep getting it wrong. And so via email, we're being told that CIN isn't going to do it. Well, I didn't ask CIN to do it. I asked CLN to do it. And there are instructions on how to produce it. That's very interesting. I don't really care. I want the report. And so I just want to make, this is not an action item, so it's listed as an action item. I'm not making a motion. I just want to make it clear that that email does not relieve the staff or the director from producing a report on schedule.
But we don't purchase them. You asked for a
hold on.
thing to purchase.
Remember to,
Yeah, sorry about that.
Trustee Claus?
This all started with us requesting a list of all the materials purchased for the month or every other month or for the last 2 months and reported. Myself, I don't care if CIN produces a report or if Overdrive is used to do it. I'd like the library, CLN library staff to give us a list of all the books that all the materials that have been purchased and over the 2-month period. And, you know, if CIN doesn't want to be involved, I guess that's their choice, but I know we have this on it. Somebody signed purchase orders to buy these. There has to be even a spreadsheet. Anyway, just however you want to do it, we want the list of items that have been purchased over the last 2 months.
Right there.
I'm not sure we're all on the same page and we're all using the right language and we're all talking about the same things and we have the same understanding of entities. So let me just start at the beginning and then kind of explain what I have prepared for next week, and what I can provide and what I cannot provide. So let me start with the CLN, and that's our library district. That's what you are, trustees overseeing and governing. The CIN is a cooperative, if you will, or an agreement between libraries to share a catalog, to follow the same circulation or borrowing limits. We come up with agreed upon principles. We save money because of courier. We get access to hundreds of thousands of more materials by coming together. CIN is a separate entity from CLN. CLN has no authority over CIN. I do not represent CIN in the sense that I have the authority to make decisions. There is a board and decisions are presented to the board and then they're voted upon. Similar to the sense that no individual trustee has authority. Again, no individual director within the CIN board has that kind of authority. It takes the majority in a public meeting to make that vote. So the library pays funds for what they call a platform fee and what they call content as part of what we pay from CLN into CIN for Overdrive. No library staff are selecting on behalf of CLN when purchases and Overdrive are made. Staff that order are purchasing for the CIN network, and it's a shared resource. So the board tasking me with something that is outside the scope of my authority is what happened at the last meeting. In fairness, I took the request to the CIN board and then they had action. I'm not sure why this needed to come to this meeting rather than next week's meeting, but that aside, I did present the information to you to let you know as soon as that action occurred. Essentially, you should have taken from it that you would not be getting an Overdrive report at the next meeting. This library board has authority over the CLN network. I have authority as the director to run reports on things that library staff are purchasing, the actions of our library staff acting on behalf of CLN. I do have for next week a report, and it is going to be explained next week, but there is what we call a report, and it's got a number, and it's what libraries in the country and nationally use. And it lists the information, and again, it's about 400 pages for all locations for the last 2 months. So that will be in your board packet, which I expect will go out next Tuesday. It is not exactly what the board asked for. The board asked for something about information to be sorted by age or be sorted by other factors and other things. There is not currently a report in COHA that produces that information presented in that manner. It is possible for the library to pay for what they call custom programming, for us to have them create for us a report that has sorting features that the way that the board would like to see the information presented to them. So if you'd asked me, instead of, again, a special meeting or anything, or waited until next week, you will be receiving information. It may not be exactly what you want, but there was conversation at our last meeting about if funds were needed to create this or to work on this, that might be possible. And this report, not understanding what your business needs are or how you intend to use this, it's not clear to me whether this would be sufficient and it's free, or whether we need to put additional resources towards it to create a custom report that is in the manner of which you want to use it for. So I do not have the authority over Overdrive and the CIN. I cannot deliver for you a report on Overdrive. I presented the request from this board and the board took action. Abstaining does not mean voting or non-voting. That board does not require an explanation for actions or for a reason for abstention or any other further details be recorded.
Yeah, I understand that you don't have any control over CIN, but they're a separate entity. I guess it just was disappointed that we didn't have someone go to that. But our time is up.
Can I just say something really quick? I was pleased that our director abstained because that meant she was moving herself out of the sphere of influence. So, and particularly where that sphere of influence lies in CIN. So I'm pleased that you stepped out and let CIN make that decision without us.
Okay. Okay.
I will point out that when I asked for this and we discussed it at another meeting, I did say if we didn't have the in-house talent, and I got a bunch of sneers and laughs, what an idiot. If you can't do it yourself, I said, then maybe we can hire someone in here that can, not hire them as an employee, contract out and have someone produce these reports. If the data is in the system, it should be reportable in some capacity. And if we don't know how to do it, then we get somebody who knows how to do it. I'm not asking for that right now, and I'm happy to wait and see what is provided to the board at the next regular meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So moving on, our last item is 2024 CLN budget impact. Library director tasking to provide preliminary budget for Post Falls and Athol water damage restoration. Trustee Hanley.
Given the great potential for significant CLN costs, which exceed or may exceed our insurance carrier, what they're going to be providing, and we could be in a budget extremis situation, I believe we need to consider some budget options. And I'll make a motion and then see how that goes. I move to implement an immediate 6 months hiring freeze with individual hiring exceptions made only by board approval during this period. I have it written down.
Okay. Has been moved to implement an immediate 6-month hiring freeze with individual hiring exceptions made only by board approval during this period. We will now have a comment on that. Trustee Blank?
Is that legal? I mean, I don't think it, I mean, we are only able to hire, the director, our responsibility. So is that legal?
I would just say I don't think it's legal I don't think this is reflected on our agenda.
Okay.
So I mean, legal counsel can comment on that, but I don't think that motion is reflective of what's on the
Oh,
agenda.
okay, I see what you're saying.
So I don't think the board should discuss it.
Okay.
Council, did you have something to say on that at this point?
What? What part? The motion
The
or
motion and
the
what was
scope?
posted as an open meeting law violation for specificity and clarification on the agenda. I don't know how a 6-month employee freeze, hiring freeze is reflected in the topic that's listed as, I guess, tasking, library director tasking to provide a preliminary budget. So I think that's out of the bounds.
I think that discussing a personnel related matter under a restoration budget item is outside of that action item for a notice requirement, and that we would be required to renotice that appropriately.
Okay, boss?
I wanted to talk about what was on this agenda, but I don't know, we have to deal with this motion and, is this saying we just, table the motion or what?
I think withdraw.
Yeah, just say that.
I'd like to withdraw the motion.
Okay, trustee Henley moves to withdraw the motion if there's no
I think,
objection.
I think you can just withdraw it, period.
Okay, all right, well then, okay, so it has been withdrawn, trustee Plus.
So I'd like a consensus, maybe we can do a motion if we need to, but I'd like a consensus that request from the board that for the next regular meetings that we have on the 21st, that we get a written budget estimate like what you've got here on the board, fleshed out a little bit more, maybe with some ranges. But this is exactly what I was looking for, and I want to know before we get very far into committing to construction and committing to doing extra work. I'd like to know where we're at and maybe separate the extra work, like carpeting areas that didn't get damaged as,
You could just interrupt for just a second.
Do you mind if you interrupt?
Agenda topics for future agendas is not on this agenda.
this is not a future agenda. This is here, tasking the library to provide a preliminary budget for Post Falls and Athol water damage. So what I am asking for is the board to task you with providing that at the next meeting. So I am looking for a preliminary budget that's got the details in it, and I would like consensus from the board. If I need to make a motion to do it, I'll do a motion, but can we just have consensus that we get a written version of this fleshed out in more detail at the next meeting?
I would like that, Director.
So again, very unclear. So are you talking about the construction cost estimates, which the adjuster is going to provide us for a total claim, which is not something that staff are involved in? Are you talking about the operational impact on, costs like for plumbing and electrical that weren't covered by the claim, or costs for extra books, or costs for extra cards, or miscellaneous costs? I will say that the board has now made 2 comments about the great potential costs that will exceed our budget, and I have not heard anything relating to the restoration that gives me that belief or would give the board a basis for that. What I believe we have repeatedly said is that the legal counsel costing $80,000 a year and the potential for insurance costing an additional $100,000 a year, that those are the actions of the board that have created a cost that is not budgeted that need to be addressed.
Sure.
And so I have not given this board any reason to believe at this point that there are great potential costs in this restoration budget that will be impacting the board. The decision of the board to dispute the claim limit from ICRIM has not been discussed. So again, there are several steps that need to take place or need to be discussed before I think it is fair or just for this board to say that we have exceeded costs.
Sure.
Mr. Boss?
So I'm not saying we have exceeded or we won't.
That's his second, and I haven't had a.
Okay, I am answering the question. I want all of it. I want all of the things you have listed there. Give us the full picture of what we're looking at and what we think, and please put it in writing and just give it to us so we can see what's going on. I'm not saying, maybe right now it looks like it's potentially $500,000 that we're going in the hole over this. I want to know where we're at next meeting. So please, can the board give consensus to ask the director to give a written version of this that's fleshed out a little more?
Trustee Mike?
Yeah, how about this? That's a start. And that was so clear and very helpful. Can we start there by taking that and putting it on a spreadsheet, and then we'll have a point to talk about? Okay, what happened here, what happened here, what happened here?
I have to be honest. It's frustrating for me. You don't have quotes today in my hand for repair work. So now you want me in less than 2 weeks. I cannot promise I am going to have actual numbers. This is the work of the adjuster. This is not the work of the director. So you're asking me again to go do something that is not within my authority or my ability, and you're setting an unrealistic time frame. Again, we're in ballparks right now. We don't have final numbers. Even the quote that I received today for post falls has to be reviewed by staff, has to be reviewed by the adjuster, has to be negotiated with the cost estimator. We're not gonna know until we open the walls. I keep saying this, you're asking for concrete numbers. You are.
Preliminary.
You're asking for, so again, I can take staff time and we can put in Excel and we can put purchase orders together and we can put every book we lost. We have 7,000 items to do that. And so are you expecting me to get that done in 12 days? That's what I'm saying. The board is being unclear. The board is being unrealistic in terms of timeframes. I am being as transparent as I can with the information that I have.
Sure.
Okay, I think what he was saying is, that, and, if there's if there's any solid numbers, maybe they could be one color, and if you have like just a total guesstimate, they could be a different color, just, to kind of give us a ballpark idea of where we're at.
Sure.
Is that?
And in another week, you'll have more information. I just want to have a running, written vision of what we're getting into. And maybe each week you can email updates or something, but by next meeting, I'd like to have this in writing and make it clear we don't have there's no quote yet or something. I'm not out trying to pin you down on that. I'm just wanting to know where we're at, and I'm really wanting to see if we're going in the hole beyond the $1 million coverage.
Yeah.
I think that's a good word, vision. I agree. I would like to see some kind of, I would like to see what did we spend so far, as closely as we can calculate that. Because I'm sure invoices that are outstanding. And pretty much an idea of all of the things that are needed and where we're going financially. And the reason I say it is because as a board, we need time to prepare for the budget impact, the potential budget impact, if this goes over $1 million. If it doesn't, it's a non-issue for more or less for myself anyway. And then we may need to adjust the budget. And the time to adjust the budget isn't in August or September when we ran out of money already. It's time now, because I'm going to save my last motion, just to spare everyone the time there. And I was going to say is I'd like the library director to provide a report to next meeting on a proposed how you're going to cut $250,000 out of the current budget. Because, if you have a family emergency or anywhere else in the company, and you don't know what's going to happen financially, that's time to put the brakes on the spending for a while, sort out what you're doing, resolve the emergency, get the prices as best you can, and then if you got some breathing space, you can ease up and back off the throttle there, or the brakes rather. So I do want to see some type of preliminary round numbers as best as they can be produced. And I want to know, because I don't know what we spent so far already. And then we have some things going on now, and then we have a number of known things in the future. And if the prices are the only thing missing, well, then give us at least a range on those. I just want to make sure that we don't go over, especially a significant amount, and be surprised at the end of the project.
Director?
I just want to recap the summary of what the board has now assigned for the director in, I think it's like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. As I expressed, next week I'm in Boise for the Directors Summit, and I have one personal leave day. And so I have essentially 4 work days that I must manage this construction project review quotes, that quote that I was just talking about today. And now this board has asked me to initiate full coverage applications, a workload that has been not described in any detail of what I need to do or what my staff needs to do. And there's a deadline, which is in, what was it, the 13th? I think it was like a week. Additionally, this board has asked me to provide short and long-term staff employment records or report, and now are tasking me to create a budget for that. So again, completely unreasonable in a managing of an employee aspect, and again, completely disregarding the direct feedback that I've given you. I've asked for April. I think April is going to provide a lot more meaningful information. And so again, I think the board failing to be respectful, the board failing to listen to staff feedback is going to have real consequences. This board received $500,000 in 2 payments for property taxes. So it has not been plugged into the budget. So again, I'm going to emphatically state that this board has no actual or factual information to make a statement that our costs will exceed what our budget is, or to necessitate a significant action, not being the recommendation of the staff, but to impose a hiring freeze when this board has not discussed that $500,000 in funds that have not been allocated in this budget. There is a lot for this board to discuss, how they want to handle the ICRIM decision, and a month is needed.
Trustee Boss?
So all I'm asking is take a picture of this, put it in a spreadsheet. I've got my notes written down, but I'm sure there's more detail in there, like the 45 and 30, and I don't know what's over here on the right. And you'll know more in a week. Just give us a rough estimate. You know, you've got some estimates for donation, but you did have a $500,000 shortfall until you erased it there. Please give us a vision of what's in your mind of what next week of where we are on this. We just want to keep a pulse on this, and I don't think it's unreasonable. And I'm not saying we're going in the hole. We have the right to know what's in your head about how this is being done. As far as the property tax, the extra $500,000, that's just what the state paid, what the taxpayers didn't have to pay. It's not extra money. So I don't think we've got any extra money than what was in the budget. I need to look at that, but please just give us a vision of what you've got going on next week, because it'll be a little bit clearer to you. And as we go along, let's keep this updated.
Trustee Hanna?
I agree with Trustee Plus. I'm not looking for some sophisticated spreadsheet. Basically, it could be a dozen line items, maybe 10 or 15 line items, whatever it is. Would just give us a vision where we are spending wise. You can put an asterisk on the numbers that you don't know, or put a range on those, and at least we have some kind of a sense of comfort. Okay, we're okay with where we're going. We're not trying to beat it to death. And because I got extra money coming in from wherever source was, Idaho there, that's very nice. I'm not spending that money in my mind right now. That money is just there, just like a carry forward or whatever. But I think we need to have ranges on these figures for the ones, what's the lowest, what's the highest, more or less, on the ones that are unknown. And the ones that are, no, just give us a roundabout total. Doesn't be down to the penny or the dollar. But if we spent, make believe $50,000 in initial putting fans in and dehumidifiers and whatever, and somebody coming up with a shop vac, okay, well, if you have an idea, it's a chunk of change, I'm sure, but I'm not concerned about Athol right now. We're given such comfort level of having plenty of space in the budget there, but I would like, at least for me, I'm interested in Rose Falls. And it doesn't have to be something very sophisticated, but just something to give us a sense that we know where we're going, and we can lay back and let you do your job.
We are
So it sounds like we had a 3-person consensus and we are over time. And so I would entertain either a motion to adjourn or a motion to, do ahead time. Trustee Claus?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, it has been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.